we get to pick how we react to things. So when you're talking, and how does this relate to real estate? It's like when you're talking to real estate sellers, don't let them steal your sunshine. There's going to be people who are under stress. They're mad that you're not going to give them full price, all cash. They have people who have called them ahead of you who have totally blown the call in terms of expressing the idea of taking payments, and they think they want to classify you in that camp, and they might treat you badly. But how you react to that is really your choice. So pick a good one. And we're going to go through some things that you can do to minimize that. But just remember, how you respond to things is entirely your choice. I always use a technique called indexing, which is like, you know about this girl Lulu who got bit by the shark out there in the Florida Panhandle? Whatever I'm going through, it ain't like that. Whatever I'm going through, I ain't dealing with that. And thank God I'm not dealing with that. I still got my hand. I still got my leg. You know what I mean? People go through some serious stuff in life, and we just whine like little babies too much. Go back a few hundred years, man, when we didn't have like supermarkets and things like that. Humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. You know, we just have it great. And if you can count your blessings and pick your attitude, there's no problem today that's anything like what humans have endured over centuries. So, like for example, I'd rather be destitute today than be a king in like the year 1400. You know, I mean, I didn't have anything like what we have today. So, I mean, maybe not all of you would agree with that statement, but when I think about it, like even destitute people have iPhones and have access to information and whatnot and have the ability to do things. You know, a king in 1400, you can't just go travel. You can't just go travel, you know, somewhere. Anyway, I mean, you could travel a little bit, but you're traveling on a camel or something like that. All right. Anyway, I'm going down a road here that we don't need to go down. Let's keep it to real estate. So, all right, I'm going to go through some things here. I think we have what, like 20 of these? Yeah, 20 of these. We're going to go through 20 little concepts here, okay, that make big impact. Number one is always remember, as a real estate investor, you're investing in somebody's asset. You're the buyer, they're the seller. Act like the buyer. When you walk into a car dealership, when you walk into a restaurant, you're the buyer of that. So you don't have to be begging sellers for things. Okay, keep that front and center. That's why I made it number one. You're the buyer. They're the seller. Don't act like you're trying to sell them anything. All we're really doing is asking them questions so that they can end up making an offer to us that might be an alternative to just a price offer. This is one statement from Chris Voss. I'm going to give you a better one, where it says negotiation is about the other party convincing themselves that the solution you want is their own idea. The other way that he said that is like this. Negotiation is the art of letting the other person have your way. Negotiation is the art of letting the other person have your way. Negotiation is the art of letting the other person have your way. What that means is by asking questions, you can get them to see if they're of the right mindset, play in the field that we're playing in, to see that your way is actually good for them. Now, I'm not very good at number three. All of you who have known me for a while know I'm not very good at this. But I like to put this in here because we should try to be a little bit more concise with our verbiage. Word economy. And I take Jerry Seinfeld, and I saw him on an interview where I learned from him on the interview. He literally, before he goes out and, as he's preparing for a comedy special, he tries to be, number one, concise, but number two, he literally thinks about every word that goes into his act and tries to get his point across in as few words as possible. We ought to try to do more of that. A little bit more of a macro level point is don't be needy. Don't be needy. Don't whine. Don't beg. Don't plead. It doesn't work in romance, and it definitely doesn't work in real estate. As soon as somebody senses a need for you to do a deal, it's over. How do you come across as needy? Well, one of the ways that you come across as needy is when you over-explain things. Oh, humana. You ever watch The Honeymooners? Where Ralph Cramden, oh, humana, and he over-explains the things that Alice is mad at him about, his wife. Don't over-explain things. If you're doing that, it comes across as needy. Now, you can explain some things, like what we're going to do with the property, but you don't have to teach people a seminar, is what I'm getting at here. We don't have to teach people our whole business model. We just have to show them what's in it for them, and if they need to know, we can explain what it is we're going to be doing with their property and why we're interested in their property and why we're interested in paying full price and why we're interested in monthly payments. Because it's the road that we go down to get them what they want and get us what we want. We make our money from our buyer because of the financing that comes through that allows us to charge a premium. Ain't nobody taking people with less than perfect credit, putting them in a house, getting them qualified for a loan. I get paid for fulfilling that need from that buyer who's a great person, a great buyer, but they just don't qualify for the loan right now. I help them get qualified for the loan. Once they get qualified for the loan, they're very happy, even if they pay a premium on the house. That's how I make my money. But you, when I am successful with that buyer, you get paid your full price without having to have it dialed down by commissions. I get a little bit of a premium from the buyer, not from you. Realtors, on the other hand, get their money out of your equity. And that's fine if you want to do that. I'll help you with that to minimize that. But I'm going to make my money if you'll sell it to me the way I want to buy it from my buyer, not from you. Fair enough? Now, we don't have to over-explain and teach a whole seminar. Okay, we can explain it very concisely. Rehearse your scripts, your objection handling until you know them perfectly. Leaf, I'll congratulate you on that. I've seen you in that portal over and over and over again. You've done it way more than one time. That's smart. That's the way to do it. All of you have access to that. Rehearse those scripts. Rehearse the objection handling. The more you internalize it, the less you're going to depend on my words. You'll understand the concept and you can put it in your own words, which makes it sound more authentic. My words are good, I think, for everybody. I've made it pretty general that it should be good for everybody. But when you understand the concept, you can just talk to things. And the way you get to understand the concept is just keep doing it over and over and over again. Now, going back to word economy and being concise, there's very few objections that come up without you actually raising them yourselves. Melvin just asked a question. I'll just go ahead and grab this link for you guys real quick so you know what I'm talking about here. I think this is it. Yeah, here it is right here. This is the newest version right here, guys. Leaf, you're already on this. I already know you've been on this. Let me put this in the chat. Look, who's your favorite actor? Who's your favorite actress? You think they just walk on the set and deliver some of the lines? You can't handle the truth. You know how many times Jack Nicholson probably practiced that? Well, maybe he didn't because, it's not that long of a line. But what about some of the speeches that happen? Some of those speeches that happen that are seriously phenomenal. When an actor is saying like hundreds of words, every single thing was rehearsed just perfectly. Think about Samuel Jackson, one of my favorite actors from Pulp Fiction. Man, you think he doesn't rehearse his lines? Don't be too confident so confident that you're not willing to rehearse. Steph Curry, you think he doesn't rehearse taking jump shots? Folks, sales or real estate investing is one of those professions where there's not like a degree that you get, and we have to sort of do things ourselves to keep ourselves at the top of our game. And what I'd suggest to you is that training, let's take the Steph Curry example. Let's take the actor-actress example. Samuel Jackson. Rehearsing, training, same kind of thing, right? Training is not something that you did. In other words, you come through this program or other programs, whatever, and now you're an expert. It's not something that you did. It's actually something that you do regularly. You can't just stop training. I just talked about physical fitness earlier. You can't just stop. You can't just stop training. It's not like you get, beefed up or, physically fit and then just stop. It's something that you have to do. So if you're not making a lot of seller calls, you still want to be crisp with understanding what's going on, and you can jump into that portal and play around with it if you don't want to call real sellers. So rehearsal is important. I'd submit to you that very few objections come up without you somehow raising them yourself, meaning we talk too much, and then some other objection comes up. So, number 8, don't go into the call expecting everybody to do exactly what we want them to do. I don't feel like we should expect to persuade somebody. Expect to demonstrate who you are as a person by being authentic. Show your competency by asking questions and answering questions. But we need to learn what is in that deal evaluation form from yesterday. Just ask the questions, get their answers, and as they have questions on why you're asking and what does all that mean, answer them to the best of your ability, hopefully using the objection handling script. One of the things that you can do to move people through the process is use questions after statements. Things like, does that sound good? Does that make sense? Is that fair? Wouldn't you agree? Yes or no? That kind of stuff helps. Get good at throwing that on the back of the statements that you make so that we can always be trial closing for agreement and learning if there is an issue with what you just said. Does that sound good? Does that make sense? Is that fair? Wouldn't you agree? And if they don't, you can address it right then. And then this, folks, we're just so much different than most real estate investors who are playing this me against you game. I'm going to try to beat you down type of game. Folks, just tell it like it is, because you're going to waste a lot of time if you don't. Don't pussyfoot around things like your name stays on the loan, the bank has the right to call the loan due, but they probably won't. I need to, match this up with your existing loan. I know it's like 30 years. I'm going to try to pay it off as quickly as possible, but I don't know exactly how long that's going to be. And if you can't live with me paying down your loan, improving your credit all along the way, maybe it's not the right thing for you. Just tell it like it is, even if you think the seller's not going to like your answer. Because one, it helps with the perception of character, and it also helps in terms of mitigating problems later when it's like, oh, he didn't actually explain that to me quite the right way, when they go to their attorney or their cousin or whoever. Just tell it like it is right from the get-go. You might end up losing some deals, but it's better than wasting time when they end up figuring it out. And another thing, don't apply your value system to the seller. What you have going on in your life is not what the seller has going on in their life. If I'm a seller and I have a liquidity issue, but I've got a huge business opportunity, I know something, I've got something, I need this, the loss that I might take on my house or the compromise that I might make on my house is going to be completely offset by a business opportunity that I might have. So when you say, well, why would anybody do this? I wouldn't do that. You can't really approach things that way. Everybody has different things going on in their life. And I just gave you an example of something good. Somebody's willing to compromise a little bit on the house because they have a business opportunity that needs the liquidity of their house or the ability for them to get out of the debt on this house so that they can use the money that they're not having to pay on this house for some other investment that they're trying to make or some other business that they're trying to scale up. That's like a good thing, right? But what about like because I don't like to focus on distress, because sometimes people have the impression that you need to have a distressed seller. You don't. But there are distressed sellers where there's a marriage that's breaking up, a divorce that's going to occur, and it's so stressful, it's so anxiety producing, it's so irritating, aggravating, annoying that you just want out of that damn house. You want out of that damn marriage or whatever. And it just, we got somebody who can do this right away, let's do it. I ain't trying to play around with some realtor, have people traipsing in and out and extend this thing out for 3 months. I'm going to lose my mental faculties in that time frame. You just don't know what people are going through and what's going on with them. So what I'm saying to you is just understand that some sellers, they need us more than we need them. And we're just trying to determine if they're one of them or not. Some will, some won't. So what? Somebody's waiting. Next. Be careful not to use your scripts as a permanent crutch. In other words, don't sit here reading, even if you can read well where it sounds like you're not reading. Get to a point where you actually do, where, like if you were on camera, like Samuel L. Jackson, Robert De Niro, any of these guys, you could actually deliver the lines in a way where you're obviously not reading from a cue card or from a script. Get to that point. So be careful about the scripts, because you're on the phone. It's easy to have the paperwork in front of you. Be careful about that being too much of a crutch, because you'll lose a deal every now and then when you're not in that situation. You might be at a cocktail party. You might be at some kind of meetup. You might be, you might be in a cab. An Uber or anything. There's all kinds of things that can happen, and you're not going to have the script right in front of you. So you got to get this to where you understand it in your brain. Another thing is to get people's numbers, get their answers to the questions, and if it just doesn't make any sense, I might finance a little bit of it, like maybe 20%, but I got to get 80% of it in cash. Be prepared to walk away if you have to. We're going to ask questions, but it doesn't mean we have to counter people. We don't have to counter. Let's just learn what they're willing to do. And also, if somebody does treat you like a jerk, they have a foul attitude, you can, if you want to deal with it, go ahead. But for me, I feel like what I get early on with people is what I get later on with people, no matter how much I try to charm. It doesn't work very well. People have attitude problems, they can get out of my life right away. So you just don't have to deal with that, folks. There's plenty of people who are an absolute delight to deal with. You don't have to deal with jerks. That deal evaluation form we went through, I explained it very thoroughly, and it only took us 30 minutes or so to go through everything. You don't need to be doing a whole lot of research before talking to the seller. You can get through that deal evaluation form relatively quickly without doing any research, because a lot of the information comes directly from the seller. So what I'm suggesting to you is don't go getting on Zillow, some of you guys have access to, mortgage records and whatnot. You don't have to go do all that ahead of time. You don't have to, because you might call them after you spent 10, 15 minutes researching the property, and they're like, we just listed it with the realtor. There's 10, 15 minutes wasted. You could have made a couple more calls. So don't be a research nerd. You don't need a book. You need to learn what their price is. And if that price isn't going to be discounted heavily enough, are they open to taking payment terms until we pay them off in full? We can get through a lot of people just on those 2 points. Not doing it that directly, doing it in the way I show you in the script, which we're going to get to next week. But we don't need to be a research nerd ahead of the time, because it doesn't make any sense to do that. There's 4 metrics we have to learn, and I covered these in the deal evaluation form. We must know the price. We must know what monthly payment they're willing to take. We must know for how long. And then we have a particular way of learning if there's going to be a down payment or not. Now, granted, that's going to come after we learn if they're open to monthly payment terms, and after we've asked the question about if they have the house free and clear. We may not even ask either of those questions if they're not open to taking monthly payment terms at all. But when they are, it can't just be, oh my God, I'm so excited, I got someone who's willing to do this, let me get off the phone. It's got to be, okay, let's go through it and let's find out what they're talking about doing, what they're willing to do. Price, monthly, duration, down payment. Duration is synonymous with term. I showed you the math on if you spend an hour a day at this, you can call 4 sellers on average, which means you can talk to 100 people in a month. Folks, if you talk to 100 people a month, that's 1,200 people a year. You have any idea how much money you'll actually make? Get to the conclusion. Get to the conclusion with the people you're talking to. We are qualifying and disqualifying sellers as we go. Doesn't have to take a long time. Don't get all hung up on one deal because you don't want to make the next call. Let's get to the conclusion, which is easier to do when you remember that the house doesn't matter. You know, people say location, location, location. I get that. I get the meaning behind that. Well, okay, so I always use this as an Aspen, Colorado, right? That's a great location. San Diego, California, right on the beach, great location. Not if I don't get good terms or good price. It still could be good, but you know, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing are the terms that you can get. Because what would I rather have? Would I rather have the house on Coronado Island where I'm paying basically, you know, market value for it, but it is a great location? Or would I rather have the house in the middle of Billings, Montana by the airport where I got tremendous terms or a tremendous price? I'm going to make more money on that Billings, Montana property, most likely. So forget about, you just don't need to do this research. You need to learn what people will do. And then we compare it to what the market value is of a house. It's not the house that matters, it's the terms that matter relative to the fair market value of a house. That's what we need to be thinking about. And then we always remember, this isn't true 100% of the time, but a lot of the people we're calling, they advertise their house. They advertise their house. And you're calling them on it. They should be thankful for that. We don't have to be begging anybody. We don't have to be pleading with anybody. And then, you know, lastly here, don't act like that seller is doing you a favor. They're not doing you a favor. You're doing them a favor by calling. You're interested in their property, you're interested in their asset, you're interested in what they have potentially for sale, and you're trying to determine if you're going to be the buyer for it. And if you're not, you can still help them sell it. The seller's not doing you a favor, you're probably doing them a favor.